Welcome to the Health Ranger Report here on Brighteon.tv. I'm Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, joined again by Marjorie Wildcraft live in my studio near Austin, Texas. And today we're talking about the incredible scarcity of infant formula, what that means for society, because food shortages are only going to get worse. But there's also this great disconnect that people have about not understanding where their food comes from. And frankly, anybody who thinks that processed corn syrup laced infant formula is food, I think you need to have your head examined anyway, because that never qualified as food in my book. That's just processed junk food for babies. And then we wonder why our babies have obesity and diabetes and all these other problems, especially as they get older, on more junk food. So how do we get back to real food? And how do we get back to abundant food that is actually nourishing and not just enriching wealthy multinational corporations at the expense of our health and our children? We'll be back with Marjorie Wildcraft with that conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Health Ranger Report. Joined once again in studio by Marjorie Wildcraft. Marjorie, we'd love to have you back. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today.
Oh, thanks. The pleasure's all mine, Mike. We're having a good time.
We always have a good time. We get along so well. It's so much fun having you around.
We have such a dire future coming, but I think really the number one thing in any survival situation is your attitude.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is the determinant of how you get through anything. And,
True.
And resources come to you when you have a good attitude.
We can crack jokes about the total doomsday of humanity. I mean, I'm kind of known for that, actually.
We got to do, I know, right? We got to do that. You got to keep, it's kind of like the MASH unit, right? Those guys always had these horrible situations and they were joking. And that really is how you get through. That is how you get through. So a sense of humor is important.
I was telling a joke this morning in a podcast. I said, how do you become a crypto millionaire overnight? Answer is the previous day, be a crypto billionaire.
You're right. It's kind of like how they talk about ranching in Texas. Like, how do you make $1 million in Texas ranching? And you say, well, you start out with $2 million.
Right. Yeah. It's easy to lose money. It's also easy for people to lose sight of where food comes from. That's our topic today. I just want to give out your website first before we get into the conversation. icangrowfood.com. And you want to give us a quick rundown of what people find?
Sure.
there?
Well, what you'll find there is I have a free webinar, and I have been looking at this problem of, I always knew there would be some kind of crisis. So how can somebody who knows absolutely nothing, maybe they're older, they're out of shape, overweight, and how can you grow lots and lots of food, even in a grid down situation? So that's what we work on, is how do you take somebody who knows nothing and get them producing a lot of food very quickly?
Absolutely. And so we're going to get into some maybe sensitive territory here for some people today, but you and I are not known for holding back. We're going to be rather blunt about this.
We'll tell them the truth.
Women who have children, they produce their own food supply. And it's called lactation, and it's the perfect food for babies. And so isn't it odd that we live in a nation where so many women who could be nursing their babies, and I understand not all women can nurse successfully, but those who can are panicked about a lack of infant formula that's processed junk food. What's going on here?
Yeah, right. Isn't that amazing how far we've gotten away from the fact that you have breasts? That's what they're for. They produce milk, and you can do that. You don't need infant formula. Yeah. There's wonderful groups like La Leche League that teach women and help women through that process of getting started. So, yeah. But there's so many things that are so crazy and so disconnected. Like, what are those studies where they ask kids, where does milk come from? And they're like, a truck? A truck.
But what I don't get about this, though, is it seems like that since the infant formula companies really came on the scene, and then in the 1970s, like the vegetable shortening, and they said that eggs were bad and butter's bad and everything. All this brainwashing, they were essentially teaching women that breastfeeding is ancient or animalistic, but the modern scientific thing is to feed them this precise formula. That's such nonsense.
It is, and there's so many aspects of our culture and our society right now that is so far away, and I think that's part of what the big change that's coming is we're going to be going right back to what totally works,
right,
very quickly, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But the real blessing in this is those things still do work. You still can work directly with the earth to get food and medicine. You don't need to go through a multinational, multi-governmental, complex, just-in-time food supply to get food. You can actually grow it,
can
or
make it.
wildcraft it, or yeah, you can make it. You can cook. You don't have to get something with a microwave.
Right.
So all that stuff still, and all the herbal medicine and stuff, it still works. So we can still do that, and I think that's we're about to very, very abruptly go back to that.
It's like our society for the last couple of decades, it just lost touch with reality, not just with food, but also even with, let's say, finances. So everything became abstract, everything became derivatives and financialization, financial instruments. And you talk to some of these Wall Street people and you're like, so what do you do that actually produces anything? And they're like, we don't really produce anything. We have numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, we're getting rich off numbers. I'm like, well, where does that meet reality? I mean, who benefits from that?
The whole disconnection. And then, like the kids, you get Guitar Hero, and in 3 minutes, you're a rock star. Right? Versus learning how to actually play the instrument.
Which is much more difficult. Yes.
Right? The whole thing, right? Yeah. Or all the virtual reality stuff. Like, I'm really worried about the metaverse. Like, how much further away from reality are we going to get?
Well, in Korea, there are kids that died because they were so addicted to video games they refused to drink and eat and poop, and they died.
Oh my gosh!
Wow. That's for whatever reason, Korean kids are really addicted to these video games.
Oh my gosh!
Like World of Warcraft or whatever. But I think that's an indication of actually where it's going. You talk about the metaverse. If people can disappear into this alternate universe, and they can have all this mental crack stimulation
and not have to face the actual physical reality that
right.
Yeah.
But then in the real world, their body is withering away, and they're dehydrated and malnourished, and how are they going to survive? I mean, because they're just going to merge with the machines and abandon their body, because that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's a
and
fantasy.
The thing is nature on its own is just so amazing and beautiful and mysterious, and we don't really need a metaverse. Like
no.
When we first started,
we're in a universe.
Yeah, this is a metaverse.
We got a verse.
Yeah, we got a verse. Like, for example, when we first started homesteading, we were living in the barn. We were living up in the barn, and we hadn't built the house or anything, and we didn't have really much electricity, and we would watch the chickens roost at night. And it was just, they are hilarious. Their whole antics, and then they would all get up in the tree, and then one of them would find a bug, and they'd all come back down, and the little fights and the little dances with the rooster, and it was just really, really enjoyable. And then when the first time we got a wood-burning stove, looking at the fire and then telling stories, and that kind of stuff is something that's innately human, and so much more rewarding and fulfilling, and building a family and the bonds of human connection. So I think whether we like it or not, we're headed into that, because the other systems are absolutely collapsing.
There you go. They're failing.
They're absolutely failing.
Well, for what, 20 years or something, we've lived in a world where people walk around with this mobile device in their palm, and their attention and their world exists through this screen, this 5.5-inch screen, whatever it is. And that's it to so many people, especially on the younger side. That's everything. But the reality around them has been completely abandoned, so that they don't understand where food comes from. They don't understand what are wild plants, what are wild food sources, what do they look like. Mm-hmm. I was even talking the other day, like the average person that eats lettuce has never seen a lettuce plant grow to maturity and go to seed.
I got to say, people also, I used to have people come up to me and go, Marjorie, I really just don't like vegetables. And I'm like, well, where did you always get your vegetables? At the grocery store, the restaurant. I'm saying, you have never eaten vegetables.
That's true.
You have never eaten vegetables. Like, if you haven't ever eaten your own homegrown, I know zucchini, right? It's kind of like a bad word. Eat your own homegrown zucchini and taste it.
Zucchini is awesome.
It's amazing. And of course we all know the homegrown tomatoes are amazing. I mean, that's absolutely true. And when your tongue, and what it is your tongue starts to really taste deep nutrient density, minerals, advice, life, and vitality is in those foods. And when you start coming back to that, it's incredible how delicious it is. And you realize, like, there's hardly a restaurant I can eat at and really
I know the feeling.
There's just, I don't think
it's like, you're just serving salt.
Yeah.
It's salt in water, and you call it soup. And it's like,
or
come on.
sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
Fried
sometimes they
salt.
spice it and it tastes good, and then you wait a minute, something's missing here, right? So, yeah, getting high quality food is a thing. And we used to all talk about being a perimeter shopper, like, and
Yeah.
really there's nothing in the perimeter either. So don't go there. There's
Nothing compares to growing your own food. And I have the most beautiful lettuce it's Paris Island lettuce. That's a variety that I like to grow. I mean, each leaf is bigger than my outstretched hand, and it's fully intact, and it's rigid, crisp, and delicious. I mean, you can fold a whole sandwich in that thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And got loaded with vitamins and enzymes.
Absolutely.
And rejuvenating moisture.
And I put concentrated ocean minerals in my hydroponic water. And so I know it's got, more zinc, and it's got more trace minerals of everything, and more magnesium than usual. And it's like, how can someone not recognize the treasure that this is?
Yeah. That's really the amazing thing is we've had so many years and decades away from what real food is. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these charts of the nutrient density in food, and really it started to drop in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and by the time you got to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there's like almost nothing in the food supply anymore.
Right.
So, when the CDC says, we fully expect that 1/3 of children born after 2000 are going to have type 2 diabetes, of course, because they just don't fundamentally have the nutrition. I was doing an interview with Sally Fallon, who, just an amazing lady about
Weston Price.
Yeah, Weston Price. And we were doing an interview together, and I was kind of riffing on these overprotective mothers. I don't know how we got off on that topic. And I said, Sally, I never wore a helmet when I was a kid. We were riding bicycles, we never did any of that stuff. And she goes, Marjorie, wait a minute. The kids born these days need helmets. She said they are now kids born, and it's scientifically shown they have thinner skulls. And there are more and more concussions per, 100 kids now than there used to be. She said, because when you grew up, there was at least something left in the food supply. The kids now, they're not getting enough of the calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, all the stuff that you need to build bones. And she said, yeah, absolutely. She said, they all need helmets. Those mothers are not being overprotective. She said we just are not producing the kids that we used to produce.
No, we mocked kids that wore helmets.
We did.
We teased
We
them.
did.
It was like,
We
oh,
sure
you look
did.
like such a dork
You
with
really
your
did.
helmet.
You were a dork with a helmet, absolutely.
Of course, we lost a few friends along the way, too, to some of our wild antics and bicycle ramps and tree houses and whatever.
Life used to be so much more dangerous, I guess.
It was way dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We had a great time. We all survived it, or most
I mean,
of us did.
Some of us did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still here. No, I mean, playing on the railroad tracks with headphones in your ears and wondering if the train's going to come,
Oh my God, no, yeah.
No,
yeah.
A friend of mine in high school died in that manner, by the way. So I'm not recommending that particular activity. But no, you're right. I mean, if you're going to make everything safe, super safe, but then malnourished and empty, then what's the point? To be resilient, and children as well, they've got to get outside, they've got to experience nature. You got to, in my opinion, homeschool your kids and have them raised on a farm type of situation
You've
with
got
animals.
to feed them high density food,
Yes.
right? And when I was homeschooling and homesteading, it was like I grew the food for our family because I knew the importance of high mineral, high nutrient density. And there's also reams of studies that show that kids that eat higher quality food score higher on intelligence tests.
Oh, absolutely.
They have way less behavioral problems. They're just better human beings overall. So, yeah. So if nothing else, making sure your kids eat really, really well, and don't think you can buy some tablets that's going to replace minerals in real food. I get it. I take my handful of supplements from time to time, and and I get it. But
Calcium is one that people don't understand, that almost all forms of calcium that are in the pills are contaminated with lead.
oh my gosh, you have those machines.
We've done the test, yeah.
Wow.
And we went out and bought, 12 different brands of calcium. Every one of them had some amount of lead. Some were really high. And it's because calcium and lead, they tend to go together in nature.
There are quite a few other studies also that show that like women, especially women my age, 40, 50, 60, tend to need more calcium.
Right.
And they show that women that do take a calcium supplementation tend to have higher incidence of hip fractures. Like
Yes.
it does something to actually weaken the bones instead of strengthen them.
Well, and what I want to get to is that plants need a lot of calcium.
Yeah.
And magnesium. So the top two minerals that go into plants are calcium and magnesium. So think about it, folks. If you want calcium supplements, it's called growing your own food and eating your food.
Eat plants.
Like you get all the calcium you need from lettuce and broccoli and beets and beans and everything else. I mean, you do not need to supplement calcium if you're growing your own food.
Yeah. Eat the rainbow and you'll get it all.
Absolutely
Eat the
will.
rainbow. And
you're going to get it in that plant bioavailable format that your body recognizes that doesn't lend itself to calcification of arteries and kidney stones and everything else, which is the artificial calcium, or I should say like the cheap calcium carbonate.
well, isolated, your body is like, what is this isolated form of calcium that's coming in?
Right.
Like, well,
That's not food, that's a rock.
I've never seen that before. You
Yeah.
know, it's, and a lot of times it actually causes an immune system reaction because
Yeah.
it should.
Your body's asking you, like, why are you eating rocks?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What I mean, I've seen chickens eat pebbles, but they have a special need
Well,
for
that's
that.
because they use it to digest
That's
their
right,
food.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a grinding stone
Yeah.
mechanism in the gizzard. Is that
Yeah,
what it is?
yep, it's a
the
gizzard,
right?
Yeah, so that's how they chew food. You don't see chickens chewing food. They just swallow
Right.
stuff, and that gizzard grinds it up for them.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a gizzard, you shouldn't be eating rocks. Probably.
Oh my God! Look, don't give them ideas. They might all start wanting gizzards. That'll be the next thing that Pfizer comes out with. Personal gizzard.
Add-on genetically modified gizzard.
That's what you need, Mike.
Yeah, then you can digest your calcium supplements. But it's so bizarre that people can get away from what is real food or what is real nutrition. And minerals, there's an abundance of minerals in the world, especially in ocean water or in areas that have been flooded previously. The minerals are redeposited, and the plants will take those up, and they can make them available to you. So you don't need to supplement minerals. Now, I understand supplements about things like, vitamin C. Those are the molecules that plants make. You can't dig up vitamin C out in the yard like you can dig up calcium. So plants have to make those complex molecules.
There's always kind of that maybe not so funny joke about the homesteader that died from scurvy, which is a disease you get from a deficiency of vitamin C, and they buried him under the pine tree.
Oh my gosh, he didn't know he could get pine needles?
So people don't know that, pine needles are very rich in vitamin C. All you'd have to do is chew on a few pine needles.
Yes.
They buried him under the tree that would have been the solution, right? So,
right.
yeah. There's again, there's just so much simple stuff that we can go back to.
Yeah.
That it's there, and there really is an abundance of it available to us. I had in some of our previous interviews, I've talked about the huge shock I had when I realized the potential problems for the food supply to collapse, and it was a shock. It was horrible, but I am so grateful for that because my life changed completely and for the better. Growing my own food has been just one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And I didn't go into it willingly. Like, I didn't want to. I was a very successful business person. Like, nobody in their right mind goes into growing food, because they have, most people don't. Let's just say that. So I had this huge wake-up call, and I said, wait a minute, I really have to learn this. And it really has been. Like the quality of food, the taste of food, the sheer satisfaction, the working with nature, getting back to something so primal and so simple and so abundant and so amazing has been, I will never not be growing some of my own food. It's just, it's what you need to do as part of being an adult human being.
Oh, I hear you. I agree. I think every family should have a garden. If you've got the space, or if not, use containers. Grow in containers, use bins.
Start a community garden, grow on the
there
roof.
you
There's
go.
shared earth. There's other people that have land that aren't using it, and you can grow. And there's a ton of solutions out there. And I always say, As a general principle at all, if you want anything, you hold that in your heart, you open your mind, and you just say, hey, universe, I really want to do this. I want to grow food. I live in a condominium. What can I do? And I promise you, you'll be in line at the grocery store and you'll bump into some guy who says, I've just got this yard and I wish somebody would grow in it.
Yeah.
Those kind of things happen. That's the way the universe is wired.
That's
so
right.
use that, use that.
Well, and now given the food scarcity and the food inflation, suddenly growing your own food is no longer just an expensive hobby. It's actually an investment that pays dividends.
Well, actually, I would even take a stronger stance, and I would say you're not going to get through the next decade if you're not growing some of your own food. Because we are headed into a severe global shortage of food, and we have way too many people that want to eat, and we have way too many forces on the planet that don't want you to eat. And it's not going to be just one season. This is a structured 10-year thing. We've destroyed so much. There's no way we're going to rebuild it in a very short period of time.
Well, but since you opened up the hatch to that rabbit hole, let's go down there. But
Okay.
see, the globalists are, of course, trying to exterminate some large portion of the human population. And so it really gets back to what you said, which I agree with. If you don't learn to grow some of your own food, you probably won't make it. But that's the intention of the globalists, because they know that most people do not know how to grow their own food, don't have the resources, don't have the experience, maybe don't even have the seeds.
And there'll be a bunch of people that just quite frankly aren't going to do it. They just aren't going to do it. Like I was interviewing a guy from Venezuela, and I said, his family was there. He's a Lyft driver, so he's making not even that much money, but it's a huge amount of money in Venezuela.
Oh, okay.
He's supporting his wife and kids. And I said, well, are they growing food? Do they have chickens or whatever? And he says, no, why aren't we doing that? And I'm like, why aren't you doing that? That's such a simple solution. It's so
Especially
funny.
in that climate where you can grow food successfully.
Yeah, the tropics, there's food all over the place.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me that there's just mental blocks,
Yeah.
or yeah.
Well, when I lived in Ecuador, one of the things that we did there, we had this massive food forest.
Nice.
And with the help of the locals that we hired, we were able to acquire and plant, I think we had like 75 different exotic fruits and things. It was crazy. We had everything, cherimoya, of course the common, papayas and bananas and all that stuff.
And
but
cacao.
a lot of,
I'm sure you had
we
chocolate.
had cashew trees.
Ooh,
Actually
nice.
growing cashews, and then we had, I don't even remember all the names now, but it was so easy to grow food there that I remember even the locals kind of took it for granted that like, oh, food's everywhere. But they understood that at least. Whereas in America, we don't realize that food is all around us, and so we miss it. Like it could be right under your feet.
Yeah. They call it the wall of green, right? When you look out there, all you see is green. I'm looking there and I see, oh, there's medicine, there's food,
Yeah.
there's lunch, there's salad. But those are skills that you can learn. You can absolutely learn it,
Yeah.
The mesquite bean here in Texas, it's an incredible food source. Acorns. I remember I was in Austin a couple of years ago, and there was this woman that had this big live oak tree, and she had this concrete driveway that was slanted down such that all the live oak acorns all kind of rolled down to a gutter.
Wow.
And
automatic harvester.
I know, right? So I had this bag, and I was there, and I was like starting to harvest all these acorns, and then she came out of the house, the woman, and I thought, oh no, she's going to be mad. I took her acorns, right? And I stood up real quickly and I apologized and I said, is it okay? I really like acorns. Is it okay? She's like, oh. And I thought, oh no, she's going to be mad. I'm taking her acorn. She goes, could you please get rid of all those nasty things? And I said, yes, I will. Yes, I will. I was so happy. I got big bags of acorns, and I
I thought you were going to tell her, I self-identify as a squirrel. And here
Right.
it is.
I haven't done that yet.
Try that next time. Now,
What is the gender pronoun for that?
we got to wrap up this segment here on Brighttown TV, but stay with us, Marjorie, on the other side. Thank you for listening today. This is Mike Adams with Marjorie Wildcraft on Brighttown.tv. Well, that's a fascinating story that you were able to just harvest acorns there, but you mentioned mesquite pods before that, and that's a resource that exists all over the Big Island of Hawaii. By the way, You got the mesquite trees there, the mesquite pods. That's a food source, and Native American Indians harvested those food sources all over the Southwest, modern day Arizona, New Mexico, all of it. And then here in Texas, we've got mesquite pods everywhere.
Yeah.
And I noticed the wild hogs eat those all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the wild hogs eat the wild onions. And I just learned, by the way, I'm almost embarrassed that it took me this long to learn this, but I've known about the wild onions for a long time. I've dug some up. And I've also known for many years about these beautiful purple flowers that show up this time of year. It was only this year that I realized the purple flowers are the wild onions.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God, the onions are everywhere. And you can see them at the right time of year.
Yeah, the other giveaway is it's called Onion Creek.
Yeah, right.
You go by there and it smells like
That's
onions.
True, yes, there's
right?
onions. So like between my chicken eggs and the wild onions, it's like omelets forever.
Yeah.
Around here. And then I have some mesquite pod flour, make a tortilla, and then you have like an omelet burrito with wild onions. My gosh.
Acorns are amazing. And the great thing about acorns is you can store them for years in their shells.
Oh,
And they're in fact, I was reading one book from this Native American elder, and she was saying they really preferred the acorns they had stored for 2 years. Apparently the flavor gets really good.
Really?
So something like a pecan, you've got about 6 months before the pecan goes rancid. So, having something that can store easily for 2 years. And acorns grow everywhere. They also grow everywhere. Now, the mesquite pod is definitely going to be more common in your desert areas, but everywhere else there's acorns,
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful food. And it's great wild food because it comes already prepackaged for you. And it's easy to process, it's easy to harvest, right? It's a great food. And there are a lot of foods out there that are like that.
That's true.
There's a lot of foods that are available.
Well,
And we're just not familiar with that.
I have a feeling, though, that the familiarity is going to be coming back in leaps and bounds because people, whether they want to or not, people are going to have to adapt or die.
That's what will happen.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of new curiosity, like, hey, what could I eat?
Yes.
And if the internet is still functioning, there's all kinds of online resources, including your website, but a lot of others, like wild foods reference materials and things like that.
Yeah, we're going to go through a major change here. And I believe it ultimately always will be for the better, not only in terms of what we were talking about of people getting more nutrition in their diet, but then getting outside and engaging in the natural world. There's just so many benefits to eating or wildcrafting and growing your own food. So it's incredible, and it'll be an incredibly good transformation. But you're right. There's going to be a lot of people that don't want to do it. There's already a bunch of people that have voluntarily said, I'm going to leave by accepting, pharmaceutical injections. And that's really basically saying,
Whoa.
I'm kind of done here.
It's a euthanasia plan. Well, that's one way to exit, but you're teaching people how to thrive and survive. I want to ask you this. We're not going to do too many more minutes here out of respect for your time, but what's the feedback that people have had for you recently? Because of the food scarcity, the fertilizer shortage, the food price inflation in the grocery stores, and the empty shelves in some cases, I would imagine you're getting a very different kind of tone now from a few years ago. What's it like?
My gosh, yeah. So I've been at this for almost 20 years now. In the beginning, I was just completely ridiculed, shunned by the family.
Really?
We started noticing we weren't being invited to birthday parties or to family events or something. And like, Marjorie, you're just too weird.
What, to grow your own food is weird?
Yeah,
weird?
it's like, Marjorie, look, this is the United States of America. They may have supply chain problems in other countries. It's never going to happen here.
Not in America.
Right, not in America. They may be empty shelves at grocery stores in other places. It's never going to happen here. And I'm like, you guys, you don't understand. We have this potential for a huge crisis, and it is just inevitable that it will happen at some point in time. So I was, like a lot of us that were preppers before prepping was cool, we were just considered odd or weird or whatever. And I honestly didn't want to be one of those prepper people, but my heart, I knew what I had known. I had seen what I had seen in terms of what's possible, and I couldn't ignore it.
But wait, I got to stop you there because how could this happen so quickly in America? When I was growing up as a kid, I would go to the farm of my grandparents. They grew all kinds of food, and they served meals, and they always bragged during the meal, oh, that's homegrown. Mm-hmm. You're eating the green beans. They're like, that's homegrown green beans. Or you got the beets, for Thanksgiving dinner. them's homegrown beets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there was pride in it, at least in my family.
Yeah.
How did we get away from that so quickly? That wasn't long ago.
You know, the last big push, I think, for local food was during World War II, during the Victory Garden movement. And then after that, you know, what did we get into? Color televisions and cars and college educations and then computers and, you know, iPhones. And, you know, it's just been a whole progression. We've just gotten further and further and further away from it.
But to mock people who grow food, that makes no sense.
I know, right? But that has changed. And you ask what's changed. And now people are like, hey, I'm really interested in that. You know, what's that website address again? I really want to see your webinar. I get that you've been working on this for decades and you probably have figured out a lot of really useful stuff. How can I get what do you have a book?
Right.
Right. All this stuff. Yeah. So it has been in some ways wonderful to be redeemed, but unfortunately it's due to the extreme circumstances that we're in now, which has not yet really, the real crisis hasn't really begun.
Well, I would imagine that a year from now, and we'll interview you probably many times before that, but when we talk a year from now, I'm willing to bet that you'll talk about how people are emailing you and saying your information saved our lives and prevented us from starving in the winter of 2022.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what I think.
Wow. Thank you, Mike. I really, that's what the whole business has been. That's what I've been working for, is just exactly this situation. So, yeah.
I think that's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the numbers. You know, the planting, the crop yields, the reduction of fertilizer, increased prices of diesel. Diesel's going through the roof. We're going to have diesel scarcity according to many, many sources now soon.
Gosh, I forgot about that.
And, you know, tractors run on diesel.
Yeah.
Food transportation trucks run on diesel. All the trains are diesel electric trains, which requires diesel. If people didn't figure that out from the name of diesel electric. You got to have diesel first to get the electric. But
yeah, we're headed into a world of hurt. We
really are.
And this is the United States, where we produce the most food on the planet, but we here are also going to be in a huge world of hurt. So it's going to be a very, very, very difficult winter, and we know that. The UN and the globalists have been letting us know that. You know, they do seem to have some sort of ethic about telling you about what's coming. So pay attention to that. Buy a bunch of backup food supplies. Go start planting stuff. Go get some rabbits. Go get some chickens. You know, get going. It's time.
Well, and that's what your website helps people do. The web address, again, is icangrowfood.com, just like it sounds. No spaces, no dashes, nothing. Just icangrowfood.com. Type it in, and you're going to get a webinar and a whole bunch of other good stuff.
And because you can grow your own food.
You can grow your own food, yeah. And in fact, we come from a long line of people who grew their own food. Otherwise, we would not be here.
That's right. We come from a long line of survivors.
Yes.
We sure do.
Yes, they gave us the gifts that we must now recognize and invoke.
Yeah.
And let your ancestry come through and plant some seeds and grow some food, because believe me, they did that.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole not growing your own food is a huge anomaly in the history of humanity.
And it's going to be a very temporary anomaly, I think,
it will be. It's coming to an end.
Yes. Well, thank you, Marjorie. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak with you. I really appreciate your wisdom and what you're doing to help so many people make it through what's coming.
Mike, and I also super appreciate you getting the word out there and just the awareness that you bring into people. So thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Okay, folks, feel free to repost this interview anywhere you want on your own channel or other platforms as well. Visit Marjorie's website, icangrowfood.com. And if you'd like to hear more interviews with Marjorie, check out my channel on Brighteon.com, or just go to Brighteon and search for the word Marjorie. That'll probably bring up dozens of interviews.
We post of other stuff there.
You can have like the Marjorie Marathon, basically, is what you can have.
Binge watch
Marjorie interviews as all of her predictions come true, month by month by month. It's happening. But again, thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, take care, everybody. God bless. Survival Nutrition is our new free audiobook that you can download right now from survivalnutrition.com. In this nearly 8-hour audiobook, you will learn life-saving secrets of how to use food, nutrients, plant molecules, trace minerals, and chemical compounds to save your life even in a total collapse scenario. I'm Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, and I'm the author of Survival Nutrition. I founded and run a multi-million-dollar food science laboratory, and I'm the author of the best-selling science book, Food Forensics. I'm also a prepper, a patriot, and a survivalist. I can teach you how to survive what's coming by growing your own food, medicine, and antibiotics that can help keep you healthy and alive even during the worst of times. At survivalnutrition.com, you'll be able to instantly download the full free audiobook as MP3 files. Keep a copy of all these files on your local hard drive and print out the full guide just in case we lose the power grid. survivalnutrition.com.